Hello, my name is Max Banfield. Welcome to my talk. Today I will be discussing a meeting I had with Sir Mark Oliphant. It was a long time ago. He was Australia's top scientist at the time, and it was around about 1980, might have been a year or so later. So the question is, why did I want to meet him, and why was he happy to see me and discuss my particular topic? Well, if you look at some of my other videos, you will see all the evidence that I'm the person who originally wrote the theory that sitting at a desk was the cause of health problems. And basically it does that because when you lean towards a desk, you're compressing your chest and abdomen, and occasionally that produces chest pains. Sometimes it produces breathing problems because it compresses your lungs and your respiratory structures, and it can produce faintness, and it can also produce problems like compression of the abdomen, can cause indigestion, aches and pains in the abdomen and the kidneys, etc. Now that is a good idea. Everyone said it's ranged from interesting to brilliant, but at that time in history, in the 1980s and 70s, every university in the world was teaching that those aches and pains which didn't show up on x-rays couldn't have a physical basis and were therefore all in the mind or had a psychological basis. So whilst I was just attempting to find the cause and method of treating those problems, it also, without any intention of mine, proved a lot of other theories were wrong. The most popular in the world were wrong. And so in the 1980s, it was a very controversial idea. And when I drew that conclusion, I had an article published in the Australasian Nurses Journal called The Matter of Framework. The editor there, Edna Davis, whose office was down at Port Adelaide in the Messenger Press building, was quite happy to publish a series of essays in which I gradually came to that conclusion. So I went rushing off to the newspapers because they talk about how they discuss with scientists, brilliant new discovery made by scientists, world first discovery made, etc. I thought, well, I've got a world first discovery for them. But they weren't interested. Well, they were, but no enthusiasm. And the reason I could discuss in other talks. And so they said that they didn't know enough about medicine. Even the medical journalists didn't know about medicine to say or make a decision whether it was right or wrong. And that I need to get the universities support, the experts support. And I couldn't because the universities, some of them just ignored me, or they were offended at me saying something which, not because there's anything wrong with the idea, because it brought their teachings into question. So whilst I ran off to the newspaper with great enthusiasm, they soon dampened that enthusiasm down. They weren't going to publish my theory as world first until I could get universities. When I went to universities, they didn't want to back me. So I thought, what am I going to do? If the newspapers want support to avoid criticism themselves, just in case it's wrong, I need to get somebody to back me. And at that time, I was listening to radio programs, and they would occasionally interview people, top scientists, and one of the top scientists in Australia was Mark Oliphant. He was ultimately knighted for his contributions to science, and it's because he worked on the Manhattan Project. He was a physicist who worked on the Manhattan Project, which developed the atom bomb in World War II. So that's one of the most important projects in the world. And since I heard him on the radio, I thought I could talk to him. And somehow or other, through the phone book or through some other means, I found out where he lived. And if you live in Adelaide, you'll know, because I'll describe it to you. He lived in North Adelaide, and to my surprise, he lived in a nursing home. And if you've been to North Adelaide, you know at the top end of O'Connell Street there is the Piccadilly Theatre Company, and towards the city there is a building which used to be called, I think, the Australia Hotel or some such thing. And that long street is called O'Connell Street. If you go towards the beach through the side streets, you come to a park. It's a very large parkland. And then in the northern right-hand corner is a nursing home. And I rang him up and I said, I'd like to see you to discuss a theory of mine. And I briefly outlined it. And he said he'd be happy to talk to me. I said I needed the backing of a top scientist before the newspapers will report my theory. He said, yeah, he'll be happy to think about it. And I got the impression he wasn't worried whether it's controversial or not, but journalists and other scientists were. He wasn't particularly worried. And so in due course, I drove down to North Adelaide and I found out where he lived, and I walked into this building, and it's in sort of, it looked like the rich area of North Adelaide. It's the way I saw it, and surrounded by trees and so forth. And I walked in to a reception area, and in one side of it there was a reception desk, and I walked up and I said, I'm here to speak to Mark Oliphant. Have an appointment with him, and it may have been something like 2:00. And they said, well, take a seat and we'll phone him up and let him know you've arrived. Well, I got up and I walked about just casually, and in about 10 minutes I noticed there's a corridor that ran off this reception area, and I saw a man coming towards me. I got the general impression that it was Mark Oliphant. And as he come into the reception, I said, how you going? Are you Mark Oliphant? He said, yes, he was. I shook his hand. I said, how you going? My name's Max Banfield. Where can we go to discuss my theory? And he said, well, take a seat. We sat in a lounge seat, and I said to him that I'd written this theory that leaning towards a desk compresses the chest to cause chest pains, compresses the lungs to cause, or the respiratory structures to cause breathing problems. It can cause faintness and dizziness, and it compresses the abdomen, etc., to cause kidney aches and indigestion and so forth. And I said, the problem is the newspapers won't print it, and the universities won't back it, because the other explanation, which is popular all around the world, is psychological cause. He said, well, it sounds logical enough to him. Sounds good. But I can't get anyone in authority, in scientific authority, to back me. Will you do it? What I need, I said, is a letter of endorsement with his signature on it so I can take it to the newspapers. And he said, well, he can't do that. And of course, that didn't surprise me. That's what everybody said in positions of authority. But he said, and he's got a reputation to support. He said he doesn't know anything about medicine. Now, to some extent, that surprised me, because he's a top scientist and he doesn't know anything about medicine. And when you think about it, it's true. It's like the average doctor wouldn't know a damn thing about nuclear physics. When you get to that level of education and that level of science, it's very specialised. There's too much for any one man to cope with all of it, so people specialise. So I thought, all right, just another waste of my time. I thanked him and I was about to leave. He said, but, he said, So I thought, oh, this will be interesting. He said he regularly meets with Australia's top scientists, and that includes Australia's top doctors. And he didn't elaborate, but I assume he'd go to meetings like friends in the city 2 or 3 times a week to discuss various things. And he said he'll talk to them about it and he'll see what they think. And I said, that's great. How long would you need to have those discussions and get a response? He said about a couple of weeks. So in a couple of weeks, I'm not sure if I phoned him or I saw him again. I think I saw him again. And I said, how did you go? And he said, well, he can't write a letter of endorsement. I said, why not? And he said, because the medics, the doctors he spoke to, said, these illnesses don't show up in x-rays on blood tests. He said, far too complicated for them to comment on. And I said, his exact words were, that whole area of medicine is a Pandora's box of mystery. And they'll probably not even know it hundreds of years from now. It's too complex. So I said, oh, well, fair enough. So that's why my theory wasn't published in the newspapers in 1980. Nowadays, universities all around the world are teaching that theory, and the newspapers are saying it was developed by brilliant teams of scientists who've come to the conclusion that sitting is a health hazard. Sitting is the new smoking, they say. They still won't interview me. So that was my meeting with Mark Oliphant. A few other things were discussed, but I won't talk about them here. And about 1980, about another 18 years went by. I invented a standing computer desk after thousands of experiments and thousands of different designs and ways of sitting, standing and moving, because just standing up didn't cure anything, and it was impractical. And nowadays, scientists all around the world are saying, we're the world's leading authorities on the new sit-stand desk revolution. That's the furniture companies. And the scientists are saying their panel of experts have discovered that sitting in a desk all day makes you sick. And instead of talking about chest pains, breathing problems, etc., we talk about heart disease, diabetes and cancer. Well, it causes a vast range of health problems. And so I'm the guy, you can tell all your friends, I'm the guy who wrote the theory, and I'm the guy who invented the desk. It wasn't the universities. I proved them wrong. And it wasn't the furniture companies. They had nothing to do with it. So thank you for listening. I'll discuss more about these things in future videos. Thank you.